She didn't hear me coming. That was the first thing. I had turned onto my street at the end of an ordinary Thursday, and she was sitting on the top step of my building with her knees drawn up and her head down. And she didn't hear me coming because she was somewhere else entirely, somewhere inside whatever had brought her here, to my steps, in the particular posture of a person who has stopped managing how they look. I stopped walking when I saw her. Not from surprise. Something else. The specific stillness that comes when you see someone you care about in pain and you understand, in that moment, that you are the only one on this street right now, and whatever comes next is yours to get right. I got closer. She heard my footsteps then. She looked up and her face did the thing faces do when a person has been alone in something and is suddenly not. The quick internal calculation of how much to show, how much to manage, how much to let be seen. I watched her do it. Then she looked at me, and she stopped calculating. "You're the only one who gets it," she said. Her voice had the specific texture of a voice that has been crying for a while and has run out of the sharp part and is now just tired. I don't know why I came here. You're the only one. I sat down on the step below her. I didn't say anything right away. I had learned, over the 2 years I'd known her, that the first thing to give a person who has said something like that is not a word. It's the evidence that you've heard them. The evidence is staying. She put her head on my shoulder. I let the evening happen around us for a while. Then I said, "Tell me." And she did. My name is Eli Marsh. I am 35 years old. I work as a sound engineer for a recording studio in the city. I spend my days listening with more precision than is normal, tracking frequencies and balances, finding the thing that's off in a mix and correcting it. It is work that requires patience and a tolerance for the same passage of music heard 40 times. And it has given me, I think, a better ear for what's underneath things than I might have had otherwise. I live in a third-floor walk-up in a neighborhood that has been on the verge of changing for several years and has not yet decided to. I cook well, run poorly, read in bursts of intensity followed by complete lapses. I was not looking for anything, which is a thing I say and which has the advantage of being technically true. Her name was Sasha Orlov. She was 32. She worked in social policy research, the kind of work that requires absorbing a great deal of information about structural suffering and producing careful, evidence-based arguments about how to address it, which meant she spent her days translating human difficulty into language that systems could process. And she was very good at it, and it cost her something to be good at it. She had moved in across the hall 2 years ago, 3B to my 3A. We had met on the landing with the specific immediacy of people who shared 12 feet of hallway, her with a plant and a box, me coming back from a run, both of us arriving at our respective doors at the same moment. She had said, without any particular warmth or coldness, "I'm Sasha, I'm in 3B." And I had said, "Eli, 3A." And she had gone inside. 2 weeks later, she had knocked on my door to ask if I knew how to fix the hot water tap in her kitchen, which had developed a behavior she described as aggressive. I had fixed it, or at least arrested the aggression. And she had made coffee while I did, and handed me a cup when I finished without asking if I wanted one, in the manner of someone who has assessed the situation and made a decision. I had stayed for the coffee. We had talked for an hour and a half. That had been the model for 2 years. A conversation that ran long. Another one. The kind of accumulation that doesn't announce itself as a pattern until you look back and see the shape of it. She had dark eyes that moved quickly and a stillness beneath the movement. The particular combination of a person who is absorbing everything and processing it somewhere you can't see. She wore her hair differently almost every time I saw her, which I had eventually understood was not indecision but preference. She suited each version equally, which is less common than it sounds. She had a dry, precise humor that emerged without warning and vanished again just as fast, the kind that operates like a pressure valve rather than a performance. She carried a small notebook, not for notes or not primarily. She had explained once that she kept track of things that struck her during the day, observations that didn't fit into the formal research, but that seemed important, which she described as the part of her work that felt honest in a way the official output sometimes didn't. She had never shown me the notebook. I had not asked to see it. The dynamic between us had developed the way I understood dynamics developed when two people are both paying attention and both pretending they're not. Gradually and with increasing difficulty. We were the kind of clothes that people from outside described as obviously something, and the kind of clothes that people inside it describe as friendship, because friendship is the true word and also the incomplete one. She had a person. A boyfriend of 8 months, a man I had met twice and found agreeable and thought about as little as possible, which was itself information I had not examined closely. His name was Tobias. He worked in finance. He was taller than me. These were the facts I had. The previous 3 weeks had been harder on her than usual. I had heard it in the landing conversations, shorter than they'd been, her more internal, the careful humor absent. I had not pushed. I had learned that with Sasha, the right move was almost always to make space and let her use it when she was ready. Because she was not someone who opened doors before she decided they should open. She had opened one on my front steps, in the dark, with the texture of someone who had been crying for a while. She had been there for 20 minutes before I arrived. She told me this later. She had not texted to ask if she could come. She had simply come, which was the version of arriving that meant she had not been making decisions, she had been following something below the level of decision-making. I sat on the step below her, and the evening settled around us, and I stayed. And then I said, "Tell me?" And she did. Tobias had ended it. That night. Over the phone, which she did not say bitterly, but which had a quality in her voice when she said it that told me she had not arrived here through indifference. They had been together 8 months. She had been trying, she said. She had been trying in the particular way that requires effort to describe. The way that means the trying itself was the problem. The effort to meet someone in a version of things that didn't fit. He said I was emotionally unavailable, she said. And I don't know. Maybe. But I don't think that was it. I think... She stopped. What do you think? I said. I think the problem is that I find it very hard to be present with someone when I don't feel understood by them, she said. And I kept waiting to feel understood, and it kept not happening. And I thought it would, and it didn't. And by the time I admitted that I had been waiting for 8 months. And now he's ended it, which is probably the correct outcome. And I know that. And I still... She stopped again. It still hurts, I said. Yes, she said. Even when something is the right ending, it's still an ending. She was quiet for a moment. The street was the nighttime version of itself, quieter, a car going by at the far end. I called Danny, she said. Donnie was her closest friend, someone I knew by name and occasional mention. She said all the right things. She said I'd find someone who deserved me, and that Tobias never understood my work and that I was better off. And she meant it, and she was kind, and I listened, and when I hung up I felt... She turned the word over. Lonelier than before, I understood this. Not from distance, from proximity. I understood exactly what she meant by it. Because it was about Tobias, I said. And you needed someone to understand that it wasn't about Tobias. She turned her head on my shoulder to look at me. Yes, she said, quietly, the recognition in it. You spent 8 months in a relationship where you waited to feel understood, I said. And it ended. And that's not mainly grief about Tobias. It's about the waiting. The 8 months of waiting to feel like the particular person you are with someone who was willing to see that. She was very still. And Danny gave you the version that was about Tobias, I said, which was kind and wrong. Yes, she said, very quietly, like the word was an exhale. We sat with it. The night held us, and the steps were the slightly cold that steps are in October, and I could feel her working through something the way I'd learned to recognize her working through things, the small shift in her weight, the breath that was a degree slower. How do you do that? She said. Do what? I said. That, she said. What you just did. How do you always... She stopped and started again. Danny knows me better than almost anyone. She's known me for 11 years, and you found the thing in 2 minutes. I thought about what to say. I thought about the 2 years of landing conversations and the notebook she carried and the pressure valve humor and the way she talked about her work when she'd had a hard week. Not the content of it, the weight of it, the way doing the work changed the texture of the evening. I thought about how long I'd been listening. I've been paying attention, I said. For 2 years, she said. Yes, I said. Why? She said. I have poor survival instincts around women who ask why when they already know the answer. I said, Sasha. She lifted her head from my shoulder and looked at me. Not the quick assessing look, the other one. The one she used when she was letting herself see something rather than studying it. I know, she said. I think I've known for a while. I didn't examine it because... She stopped. She looked at her hands. I didn't examine it because I was afraid of what happened if I did, and then it changed what we were. And now, I said. And now Tobias has ended something that was partly an attempt to not examine it, she said. Which is a terrible reason for a relationship to exist, and also probably a true description of part of it. She said it with the precision she brought to honest things, the willingness to name her own mechanisms without softening them. This was the thing about her that had been the first true thing I'd noticed. The honesty with herself. Not brutal, not performed. Just accurate. I don't want to be a rebound, I said. I want to be precise about that. If this is tonight and grief and the steps, I'm still here. That doesn't change. But I'm not. I don't want to be the next thing you reach for. She looked at me for a long time. The October air was still. You're not the next thing, she said. You're the thing I've been not examining for 2 years because I was afraid of it. That's not a rebound. That's the opposite of a rebound. I need you to be sure, I said. Eli, she said. I came here without texting. I didn't decide to come here. I came here because something in me knew where to go, and it didn't ask for my input, and it came here. She held my gaze. That's not grief about Tobias. That's something else. I know the difference. The street was quiet. A window opened somewhere above us and closed again. The notebook, I said. She looked at me. The things you write down, I said. When something feels honest in a way the official version doesn't. I've wanted to ask you about it. I didn't because it was yours. She reached into her bag. She took out the notebook and she held it without opening it for a moment, in the way she held things she was deciding about. Then she opened it. She didn't hand it to me. She turned to a page and held it at an angle so we could both see it, in the middle distance between us, and she pointed to a line. The line was in her handwriting, dated 6 months ago. Told Eli about the case today. He asked the question I hadn't let myself ask yet. How does he always find those? She turned to another page, dated 4 months ago. Ran into E on the landing. 15 minutes became an hour. Tobias called while I was up there and I let it go to voicemail. Noticed that I let it go to voicemail. She closed the notebook. She looked at me. That's not a rebound, she said. I didn't have a response that was adequate to that. The notebook closed in her hands was 6 months of her noticing, careful and private. The honest version she kept for herself. She had opened it. That was the whole sentence. I put my hand over hers where it rested on the notebook. She turned her hand over and held mine. I'm going to need some time, she said. Not a lot, but some. I want to do this correctly. I know, I said. You're not going anywhere, she said. Not a question. 3A, I said. 12 feet. She laughed, briefly, surprised. The exhausted version that arrives at the end of an evening that has been hard and has also turned into something else entirely. It was the best sound I had heard in a long time. You should go upstairs, I said. It's cold. I'm not cold, she said. You're shivering. Marginally, she said. I stood up. I held out my hand. She took it and stood, and we went inside together, up the stairs, and on the landing outside our respective doors, she stopped and looked at me, with all of it still present in her face. The grief and the honesty, and the thing that had been not examined for 6 months and was now simply there. Thank you, she said. For what? I said. For not saying the kind wrong things, she said. Always, I said. She went inside. I stood on the landing for a moment. Then I went inside too. The 12 feet between us felt, that night, like the exact right distance. Not far. Not yet. Just enough. 3 weeks later, she knocked on my door on a Sunday evening. No crisis, no reason given. I opened it, and she was there with her notebook and a bottle of wine, and the expression of someone who has done the time they needed to do, and arrived at the other side of it. I want to show you the rest, she said, meaning the notebook. I stepped back. She came in. We sat at my kitchen table, and she went through it. Not every page, but the ones that were mine. The ones dated over 2 years, that had my name or my initial, or that described a conversation I recognized from the inside. There were more of them than I had expected. She read them to me without commentary, which was the most honest presentation of anything I had ever been given. When she was done, she closed the notebook and put it on the table between us. That's what I didn't examine, she said. I looked at the notebook. 2 years, accumulated, careful and true. Sasha, I said. I know, she said. I know. We sat for a while with the wine and the notebook between us and the Sunday evening doing its quiet things outside the window. And then she put her hand on the table the way she put things somewhere when she had made a decision. And I put mine over it. We did not rush any of it. She had asked for time, and I had agreed that the correct thing was doing this right, and we did it right, slowly, with full attention, the way things deserve to be done when they have been 2 years in the building. 6 months on, her notebook was on my kitchen counter. Not moved in, just there. The way objects find their natural resting places in a life that has become shared. She still wrote in it. I still didn't read it without being invited. She invited me more often now. A year after the steps, she showed me an entry dated 3 weeks before she moved in across the hall, before I was even a person in her life. She had written about the move, about what she was hoping for in the building, the kind of neighbor situation she wanted. The last line said, "Someone worth staying up talking to." I looked at it. "You wrote this before you met me," I said. "Yes," she said. "3 weeks before," I said. "Yes," she said. I thought about landing conversations and notebooks, and the question I hadn't let her ask herself, and the voicemail she'd let go. "And then you moved in," I said. "And then I moved in," she said. "And found you." She said it the way she said true things, simply without decoration. The way the honest version sounds when you've stopped being afraid of it. 2 years on, when people asked us how it started, I told them, I found her on my front steps. She told them, he sat down on the step below me and didn't say anything. And that was the right thing. We agreed on this. The staying was the whole first sentence. Everything else was what followed once the staying had been established. Some things you look for. Some things find where you live and sit on your steps and wait for you to come home. The best ones tend to be the second kind. What would you have done? Would you have sat down on that step? Or would you have said the kind wrong things that would have helped for a night and missed the point entirely? And have you ever understood someone so completely that the understanding itself was the thing they needed? More than any comfort you could have offered? Tell me in the comments. If this one found you somewhere, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.